And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
Blake, I'm really excited to talk with you about what is easily the biggest conference realignment news of the offseason. UMass is heading to the MAC. Are you excited to talk about that today on the show?
Well, no. I mean, good for UMass. That means they make more money, right? Yeah. And good on for UMass. Those are the kinds of realignments that I like. What I don't like is ESPN completely dictating everything that they think that they can dictate without any repercussions. What's the UMass mascot?
The Minutemen.
That's why you're probably a big fan. That's why you started off with it, right? The Minutemen.
Wait. Okay. All right. Is that really what I set myself up for?
I mean,
I just hope we don't lose the UMass battle, which is I'm not going to say what it is, but that is a very good regional rivalry that we have.
That nobody knew existed until right now.
Well, I mean, you don't see all the Sickos committee's posts where it's the C and the UM logos on the score bug. You don't know what I'm talking about?
I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. But
I'll send it to you.
That's not the hot topic that we'll talk about here today. Joe, I've already had somewhat a little bit on my own show about this, but I'm intrigued to talk to you about it. We'll be doing our hot seat tracker before the beginning of the season, and obviously we got to start off with Florida head coach Billy Napier and his hot seat.
Yes, so I had a bit of an idea a few weeks ago, and I wanted to start doing it this week, which is I want to go through as many coaches as possible that we think are on any range of the hot seat, guys that are in year 3, 4, that are maybe haven't gotten to that level of expectation. And look, we could talk about somebody that's a 1 on the scale, which is not even going to get fired at all. But Kirby. I think the conversation, well, we're not going to talk about Kirby. We're not.
Okay.
But Lincoln Riley, I think, is a good example where he fits somewhere on that scale because of the way things turned out last year. Billy Napier is the easiest one to start with, and I know that you're excited about this.
Out of Billy Napier, Dave Aranda, and Sam Pittman, who is on the hottest of seats?
It's got to be Pittman.
You think so?
Yeah, I feel like he got this year kind of out of goodwill, because I think that everyone kind of likes him. Yeah, but let's be honest, I don't think he deserved it. He probably was the most fireable coach last year. They stunk.
Here's the crazy thing, man. I know you're going to disagree. I don't think that they actually stunk. I think that they were absolutely decimated with injuries because they had Landon Jackson, and that defense was really good. I mean, Joe, they played LSU with 4 new offensive linemen, all of them getting their first start in Death Valley. So, I mean, I look at that and say, were they bad, or was it a lot of bad luck happening with the Hogs? Because if you remember, oh, my bad, but if you remember – in Pittman's second year, remember when they clapped those Longhorn cheeks in Fayetteville? I mean, when they, listen now, Sam has had some good years. I mean, he did go 9-4 a couple years ago.
I think our expectations of him got super high, but one could argue that when you deal with injuries, the way that I look at it is that like it should really kind of only lower your ceiling by like a couple of wins. I feel like they fell completely off the deep end with the amount of injuries that they had. Because they were injury prone the year prior and they went 6-6. That makes more sense to me.
Oh, not like this though. Not like this.
That's a depth issue though, and one could argue that they didn't have the guys, the depth, the playable talent in the depth of their roster that when they dealt with injuries, it's a coaching issue.
Decimated by the portal too, which was
awful.
All right, so we'll talk about Billy Napier in our first hot seat collection. We'll go up to Ann Arbor, Joe, and talk about the first-year expectations for Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore.
Yes, this is one that we've punted a few weeks in a row, but finally we are going to get to it talking about what will happen for Sherrone Moore. I'm curious which one of us is going to be the most bullish on this. I feel like it might be me, but we'll have to find out when we get to that segment.
Just because I said that it's a lazy hire doesn't mean I don't think he will have success.
Right.
Right. I mean, them going 9-3 in the Big Ten next year is actually not that difficult.
Okay, so I think we are on the same page.
Yeah,
that's where we're going to get pushback from Michigan fans because they're going to think that 9-3 is a bad year for them because they just won a national championship, but it shouldn't be.
Year one of a head coach. I mean, Joe, if he goes 9-3, how many games did he win as the interim coach? 6?
No. It was only a couple games. It was like 2 or 3.
Well, they split it up the first time, and he was the interim head coach. And then he was the head coach for all 3 of the last games. So he had 4 wins as an interim head coach at Michigan, correct?
It says he's only considered to be 1-0 as an interim coach. But I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think it's got to be 3-0 or 4-0. I'm sure the Michigan fans will correct us in that. I mean, if he goes 9-3 and Joe, and you add on 4, and he's 13-3 in his technically year 1, I mean, can we really say he's that bad? I mean, if he's 13-3, I mean,
it's not a bad start.
And then what if he goes 9-3 the next year, and then you're starting to talk about him being 22-6?
Sounds like Marcus Freeman.
Sounds a lot like Marcus Freeman. And you know what else is interesting? If all teams that need to give a coach patience, I think Michigan is the ultimate team that shows why patience is key with Harbaugh.
That's a very good point. I didn't even think of that. Well, we got to bring that up later. We definitely need to bring that up later.
That's why you have me here. I am the anchor of the show. You're just the young. Okay.
I'm the Anjo. I'm the Anjo in the title. I get it. It makes sense to me.
You know, they come for Ruffino, but they say for the Anjo. As my grandfather would say, you young whippersnappers, you only think about what's in the present, never what was in the past.
I mean, there's truth to that. We're looking ahead.
Yeah, the past is a good teacher sometimes if you let it. Joe, that's not the only thing. We will wrap this show up today here, too, talking about something that – now, listen, I know you're going to hate this, but something that I do think that current LSU head coach Brian Kelly over the last probably 9 months has been beating on the table over is helmets and radios. They did it during the bowl series, and they did not let LSU. So the guy that was actually out here clamoring for it, they actually didn't let his team have the helmets and the radios. But, Joe, a very interesting conversation here with college football potentially going with helmets with radios, which has been going on in the NFL for how long now?
Right. It's crazy that it took us this long to get to this point. And I think that this would have got a lot more pub if there wasn't all this Tennessee and college football playoff drama that's been happening.
Michigan.
I think this would have gotten a lot more coverage if this was like a normal, quiet offseason. It's a big deal. It is a big deal.
Name a year that we've had in the last decade that we've had a normal, cool.
That's a good point. Whoa, wait.
We have not.
Nick Saban only retires once, okay? So like we gotta bring it. That what the real catalyst of everything retiring here.
Or COVID. What was the bigger thing? Actually, almost not playing a season.
I would argue Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh leaving college football in the same offseason had more domino creation than anything that COVID did, because COVID was just like we didn't know what was going on. I think that we have never had a coaching carousel that has lasted this long, and it's all because of Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh.
Can you title this episode Saban versus COVID?
Yeah, I'm sure that the Alabama folks will absolutely love that title of the episode.
I'm sure YouTube will as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't get taken down.
For sure. All right, everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share if you're on Facebook. Share to all those groups. Share to all of your social media pages. If you're watching us, listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, and notification bell wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, we got lots to get into. I think that we got lots to talk about here with Billy Napier, so we'll start off with that. Really excited about it. Let's talk about our good friends, though, buddy, over at betonline.ag. Excuse me. Had a little bit of a belch there. Talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Don't go anywhere. We're back next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. All right. Actually, what's funny about this, Billy Napier might be back on Alabama staff if Nick Saban, or he could be on Kirby's staff. Who knows? Because I don't think that this is going to last long.
Kirby's staff would make a lot of sense because I'm sure that there is, as we talked about last night, there's going to be a new opening. Someone's going to leave, and then they're just going to – it'll be a senior analyst, and then he'll come down and he'll be the O-line coach after that.
Oh, God. I wonder where he'll be an O-line coach at. Joe, we're doing this series here on hot seats for our hot seat tracker for head coaches, and we thought that Billy Napier would be a good place to start. It's been talked about a lot. Let me start off with this because I think it's only fair to say this. Now, I talked about this last week actually on my Around Your SEC show. I led off with Billy. Joe, there's a very good chance that Billy Napier could be 5-2 going into the Georgia week. Very, very good chance that he's there. And a lot of people, like they did this year, remember when they went into the game with Georgia in Jacksonville, the largest cocktail party. We thought, man, maybe Graham Mertz, they're playing okay. They're 5-2. Yeah, they're about to be 5-3, but could they upset an LSU? Could they upset this team? Could they upset that team? You know, at the end of it, when Jordan Travis went down, that game in the Swamp, a lot of people were like, well, hey, man, could they upset Florida State? Is this the week that Florida State goes down? But, Joe, the last 6 weeks of the Florida schedule, I think is the most brutal scheduling that I've ever seen. Florida State, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, all in there for Billy in Florida at the end of the year. I'm going to say something that's not going to make sense. Florida has a potential to be the best 5-7 team maybe ever. And I don't know if it's technically created equal if Billy is 5-7, that I'm not going to say it's not a bad year. It will be a bad year. Don't get what I'm saying wrong. I just think he's got so many hurdles that he has to overcome that is he the hottest or the biggest coach with the hottest seat? Yes. I don't know if he makes it through all of this. But I got to say, Joe, he might have the toughest schedule that we've ever seen in college sports or college football, maybe ever.
The schedule that he has to face is brutal. And one of the things that I've heard throughout this cycle that's been brought up on a number of college football shows that I listen to is that they possibly decided to hang on to Billy Napier this year because they didn't want to throw a first-year coach into the heat of having to deal with the schedule. Like that would have been so brutal. There's also speculation that the recruiting class that he had that was so good, they didn't want to risk losing a lot of the guys that were committed, especially a guy like DJ Lagway, who is a program changer. That is a guy that completely changes the direction of a football program. He is that gifted of a quarterback prospect. If I were to put this on the scale, 1 being not going to get fired, 10 being definitely going to get fired, I think it's a 7. And here's my reasoning. Really hard schedule. Very, very tough final stretch, as you talked about. It is going to be an uphill battle for him to get out of that. I do think he has bought himself time, though, and it needs to be acknowledged. As much as we clowned on him on signing day for losing a couple kids, the final recruiting class and the guys that he signed were significant. That class is going to be really good in a couple of years, and one could argue
if they stay.
If they stay, the administration could be argued, we got all these really good recruits. Do we really want to start from ground zero yet again and hope that whoever comes in is able to get these kids to stay? Do we really want to risk getting picked apart like we just witnessed happen with Alabama where a bunch of kids hop in the portal? Do they really want to risk that happening? I think his efforts in recruiting have shown signs of progress, which is why I don't want to go all in on the 10. I think it's likely he does get fired, but I think there could be an argument made on let's be a little patient because he stepped into a team that Dan Mullen did not recruit at this level, and he had to completely start from scratch in order to get there. He is not Hugh Freeze, who's going to get this thing running as quickly as possible. Billy Napier does not have head coaching experience in the SEC. It was going to take him a little bit longer to get where he needs to be. And I think that is where that argument could be for him potentially staying if they go 6-6, maybe even 7-5 if things go, really, really nicely for them.
Joe, if he goes 5-7 this year, he'll be 16-21 as the head coach at Florida, which is not acceptable. There's a lot of comparison between Billy to actually somebody who is a rival of Florida, and that being Florida State with Mike Norvell. But I look at Mike Norvell in his first 2 years, Joe. He went 3-6 during COVID. He went 5-7, which is, I don't even know if I want to count 2020 or 2020 for him because of all the craziness that happened. More of 2021 being his first year, but he turns it around, Joe, and goes 10-3 and 13-1 this year. I mean, if you're in year 3, you can't, schedule or no schedule, you cannot go 5-7. You got to find a way to be bowl eligible. You got to find a way to be 7-5 at worst. If he goes 7-5, maybe I could see a glimpse of maybe, and he recruits well. Look, let's give him one more year. I mean, they went 5-7. They're 7-5. Maybe they win a bowl game. They go 8-5. Who knows? Joe, I got to admit, I got to give this a 9. Maybe even a 9. Maybe even a 9.5. I just don't see a world where Florida sits on their hands and doesn't make a move if Billy Napier does what we think he's going to do.
I think where this whole thing gets so messy is the previous coaches and how quickly they've been moved on from. Like, at what point, and I understand it's the old adage of like at a certain point, you got to pull the plug instead of continually reinvesting into something that's not working. At what point, though, do you not try to give a guy a little bit more time than you've given the other coaches? Unless he's that insufferable of a person to be around, and that
he's not that insufferable of a person. Billy's not a bad guy.
Right. So normally that's what gets guys kicked out early, is that there's friction between the administration and a coach.
The argument with that would be, though, Joe, can you hang on to a coach that'd be 16-21? God forbid he goes back-to-back years 5-7. And you're talking about a coach that's 21-28. No, he wouldn't be 21. 21-28 as a head coach. Joe, he wouldn't have a winning record. He wouldn't have a winning record in the conference. I understand that he's got one of the hardest schedules, but Joe, I'm saying 5-7, and I think I'm being generous.
That's fair. That's very fair.
By the way, just throwing this out there, I'm giving him a win in week 1 against Miami. Okay, which I think Mario Cristobal is another guy that could fall on this scale here of, is he on the hot seat? Is he not? I look at Billy Napier. I think he's a great guy. I honestly believe he's a good recruiter and a good coach. When it comes down to it, this just isn't the place for him. It's not. I just don't think that Florida, if you're being unbiased, this is not where they need to be. Joe, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. When Florida is on, they are the most dangerous. They are most dangerous team in the state of Florida, without question. We've seen Spurrier, we've seen Urban, we've seen guys, even Dan. That 2020 year, they went crazy. Even the year before in 2019, it was one bad year for Dan Mullen, and they cut the cord. They're holding on to Billy Napier longer and giving Billy Napier a longer leash than they ever did Dan Mullen. It all depends on who you think you can go and get. And I do think that behind the scenes, those conversations are already starting to be had. I think Florida knows that he is a sitting duck. Joe, there was and Florida fans in the comments are going to kill me for this. There's scuttlebutt on social media. That's a white man's word, scuttlebutt. But there's a lot of stuff on social media about boosters not giving money to the program because they don't think Billy Napier's the guy. So,
Which is so stupid, by the way. That is such bullshit to do we don't think he's the guy. We don't really think he's the guy, so just not going to help him. Like, this is why this program and this football team has sucked for the past decade, because these boosters think they're hot shit and they make dumbass decisions like this. We know that they are the ones responsible for bungling the Jaden Rashada situation. I just feel like there's so much toxicity with this goddamn booster group with the University of Florida. They all think everybody is going to be Urban Meyer. They fuck themselves. They literally, that is where the root of the issue is. Like, we can sit here and talk about Billy not getting the job done as much as we want, and there's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that, which is why we're having this discussion. But we got to have a real convo here, Blake, about this booster organization for Florida. They meddle way too goddamn much, and it does not get covered.
Well, that's a head coach's problem. Look, head coaches got to put boosters in their place. That's all. That's also a part of Billy's job now. You think that there's not rogue boosters at every big-time Power 5 conference or team in the country? Hell yeah, there is. You don't think Josh Heupel, we talked about the NCAA in Tennessee, you don't think Josh Heupel picked up the phone and called whoever the CEO of the Spire Group is and says, "You stupid son of a bitch, what are you doing?" Like,
that's a good point.
I do think that is a part of his job. But, Joe, I got to tell you this. I don't necessarily disagree with you behind the Jaden Rashada stuff. That's not on Billy. None of that is on Billy. Bet you they were letting Billy know everything that was going on, though.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the problem. I'm going to get absolutely killed by my home base in saying this. Florida and LSU are a lot alike. And after 2 years of winning a national championship, LSU fired Ed Orgeron for being sub 500. I could make the argument. That LSU, from a national title standpoint, I can make the argument in the last 20 years from Florida, from a national title standpoint, LSU is a little bit more because they've had a little bit more stability here for longer periods of time. Joe, Florida's got 2 in that same period. LSU's got 3. So my point in all of this is, how do you see Ed Orgeron a couple of years ago won a national title 2 years? He actually didn't even make it 2 years. He made it a year and a half, and their athletic department said, "Hey, you just beat Florida, so what? You're out." You cannot sit on your hands in this conference.
That's a good point.
You just can't. And I brought this part up earlier. I don't think it's the boosters thing. Look, they've missed on head coaches. Okay,
a lot. When was the last good? The last good hire they had was Urban Meyer.
I thought that they needed to give Dan another year.
That was stupid.
That was very stupid. I mean, he literally was just playing for an SEC championship game.
He got wait. This needs to be. Just to throw this in there before we. Kyle Trask was talked about for a period of time as a Heisman finalist. Kyle Trask. I'm going to say that one more time.
I don't think Trask was that bad as a college quarterback.
He wasn't even a starter in high school, and he managed to get what he got out of it.
King?
Or was it Kyler? No, it was Derek. It was Derek King's high school.
Derek King that was the quarterback ahead of him. Joe, a lot of people wouldn't start.
All I'm saying, though, is that what he got out of the talent group.
Look at you going
Florida,
after quarterbacks again.
I'm just saying they moved on way too damn quick. Imagine if they let him coach Anthony Richardson and it wasn't Billy Napier. Just imagine what that would have been.
They did. He
was a freshman, though. I mean, he looked really good as a freshman.
Oh, brother. No, he didn't. I mean, he ran really good. Joe, he ran really good.
No freshmen are there's no good freshman quarterbacks. They all are like that. He played way better than expectation.
I was at a game where Anthony Richardson tried to throw a hitch route, and it legitimately hit 16 rows up in the stands.
He was raw as hell. Okay, all right, we're getting distracted here.
But I understand your point there in reference to moving on from Dan. But I just look at Florida as a place. Joe, I keep saying this, and if I say it too much, God bless it, it's going to come true, and the whole entire SEC is going to hate me for this. Could you imagine getting a coach like Lane Kiffin to be at Florida? if Lane Kiffin is realistically on the table, Billy Napier, not only should you fire Billy Napier, you should get the governor. Well, let me not say that because it's too political. You should ban him from the state of Florida for his entire life.
I understand what you're saying.
Lane Kiffin now.
Wait, but
can pull it off.
I understand that there is this desire and this want for Florida to immediately pluck the biggest name on the market. But I feel like, one, a lot of times when these openings happen, very rarely do we actually see that first option and that first name leave unless they have some sort of prior affiliation with the school, meaning that they played there, father played there, they were a coach on the staff for a long period of time, something along those lines. And I just also, Florida has had multiple coach openings, and I feel like they haven't gotten it right. Why would any coach really be excited about jumping into this?
Because it's Florida and people know what you can do there.
I want to add this into the fold, though. A very common thing that people say is that if you say everyone's an asshole, it usually means that you're the asshole. You know what I mean there? Like if you think that everyone's being mean to you, the reality is that you're the one who's actually the one who's at fault, and you need to look at yourself. All I'm saying here is that if we have gone through this many coaches, this isn't two.
Oh, no, 4? Their athletic department has been absolutely trash.
That's what I'm saying, is that instead of pinpointing, we got to fire Billy Napier, at what point does Florida not look inward and say, we got to start completely over? You know, we have to figure out ways that we can build a foundation as an athletic department rather than expecting a head coach of a football program to hit the ground running when the foundation is completely cracked.
But you do bring in, but the problem with that is that there's been so many really good Power 5 programs that have been fractured, okay, and the foundation has been cracked, and you go and make a big-time head coaching hire, and overnight it changes like this. I mean, I could name I could name 20 off the top of my head. Hell, I can name one of them that was at Florida. And I think your analogy about, hey, man, you can't just go out there and hire Urban Meyer every time. And you're right on that. But, Joe, I'm not asking him to hire Urban Meyer. You know what I'm asking him to hire? A Lane Kiffin. Somebody that'll get you 10-2 every year at minimum. And you know what happens when he goes there? He destroys it in recruiting in the portal. They're not. They would not. Let me not say it like that. It would be very rare when they only have 9 wins.
All right, let me put it this way. I'm only firing Billy Napier if I know that I can get Lane Kiffin. Because
if he goes 5-7 again and you have 2-3 losing seasons, you got to move from him.
But this happens so much in college football, where I think administrations fire guys and they think to themselves,
name a coach that was 3 seasons and had a losing record at a massive school like Florida that they moved on and you thought that they shouldn't have.
I'd have to. I think it's a unique situation, though. I think Florida's situation is unique because the amount of times that they've fired coaches consecutively, and then on top of after very short stints, very, very short stints, nobody has gone past 3 or 4 years, if I'm remembering correctly. But I think that there's positives, though, that could be taken away from his performance in recruiting. And also, he's got a huge uphill battle with what they have to do with who they have to face on the upcoming schedule. Let me ask you this, though. Say they upset one of the premier teams on their schedule. I don't know who that is. Do you think that would buy him some time if they go 5-7?
1,000%. Not if they go 5-7. Because that means they would lose to somebody like Vanderbilt that they're not supposed to lose to. Oh, wait, they did lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, so he had a top 5 pick at quarterback once he came in. There's not a lot of excuses. I mean, Joe, you're talking about programs in your own conference. So the year that he came in, and this is just my last point, the year that he came in and got in at Florida, Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley were the 2 premier coaches that got other head coaching jobs. That's who you're compared to.
You would know this a little bit better than me, and this is legitimately a question. Did you get him?
Yeah, I got it.
That hiring of Billy Napier, was he their first choice? Was that
Yeah, because they panicked. They thought LSU was going to get him, and they flew to Lafayette, hired him because they thought LSU was going to get him, and LSU didn't even come close to interviewing him. I'll just say this now. LSU's number one choice was Brian Kelly, and their fallback guy would be a guy like Lincoln. And Lincoln saying, I'm not going to LSU because Brian Kelly had told a recruit, Walker Howard, okay, long story short, and others, okay, Will Campbell, others, that he was coming to LSU. And that's why Pete Thamel tweeted it, because recruits were talking.
I'm asking this because this was prior to me like really being as deep into hosting as I am. Did they even consider interviewing Brian Kelly or Lincoln Riley or any of these premier coaches?
Brian Kelly had let it be known that he wanted out of South Bend and that Florida would be a premier destination for him. They didn't even turn that. No, they didn't even turn him down. Yeah. And now he's 2-0 against him. He's won the West, and Joe, he's got a Heisman Trophy winner. What does Brian Kelly do with Anthony Richardson?
Oh, he's a first overall pick if he plays in that offense.
He actually probably comes back this year.
Yeah. Yeah, he could be argued he would have stayed longer.
He would have stayed longer, and the truth is, Joe, they would have been 9-3, 10-2. That's the truth. And so you look at a place like Florida, Joe, there's no excuses.
Okay, I understand that, and to be a little bit more clear here, sub 500 is not good enough. That's probably what I should have been a little bit more clear in saying when I mentioned the Lane Kiffin thing. But you brought up Mike Norvell, and I remember Mike Norvell coming into year 3, and everyone was like, we got to get rid of this guy. This guy is going to stink. Florida State's going to be really bad. And they showed so many positive signs in progress on offense.
Well, yeah,
they showed so many positive signs. They were a really good team.
If Napier goes 10-3, he's not getting fired.
Okay, right. I'm just trying to bring a comparison though here.
There is no comparison.
I think that there were a lot of really young, good football players on that Florida team last year that were just really inexperienced. There are athletes on that team.
I will say this now. A
lot of freshmen and sophomores that had to play last year.
Hey, now I will say this. Billy got a defense now. But here's
an underrated DC too. That's what I'm trying to get at is that like this could come together.
Bringing Ron Roberts. But here's the thing too. Remember this now. When you go out for a special teams play and you have 2 players with the same number and you're losing, those issues magnify so much because you're getting your asses kicked.
If I remember correctly, did they get rid of their special teams coordinator?
I hope so.
I'm looking it up.
God, I hope so.
Let's see if they did. They call him the game changer coordinator. Oh no, he was there last year.
Can I tell you this before we transition to Sherrone Moore? There is no program that potentially will have 3 losing seasons back to back to back that could go from the slumps of hell to being a tier 1 top tier SEC program more than the Florida Gators. Nobody. Mississippi State can't do it. Vandy can't do it. A&M's not there. South Carolina can't really do it unless they got Steve Spurrier from Florida. I mean, Shane Beamer's not going to get him there. The right coach gets in Gainesville, nighty-night, sweetheart. Night-night.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, it is a historically good football program, and there's a rich history of recruiting and funding to that program.
Joe, I was a senior when Tim Tebow brought his happy Christian ass into Baton Rouge and was in the stands. It wasn't just Tebow, though. Percy Harvin. Who was Brandon Spikes? Aaron Hernandez.
All right.
They had killers. Lewis Murphy.
Okay, you didn't have to use that descriptor.
I mean, am I lying?
No, you're right. They recruited at an elite level.
like dudes that would knock your head off. Joe, remember when they played, was it Oklahoma or Ohio State in the national championship game, and the safety comes down along the sidelines and kills a man damn near, knocks his head off. Yeah. Florida, that is Florida. Florida is athlete on top of athlete. They will smother you with speed, and they'll out-physical you. That is the University of Florida. Anything below that is not their standard. The Florida standard every year should be playoff or bust. That's the bottom line.
They got a lot of work to get back to that, though.
And it ain't going to be with Billy Napier. All right. It
killed the man already.
It isn't. All right. Let's talk about Sherrone Moore here. So, Joe, we've continued our process here with first-year head coaches. Now we are with Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore. What says you about his first-year expectations as a new Wolverines head man?
Yeah, I was a very big champion of promoting Sherrone Moore. I even went as far as to say early on in the cycle, in parts of the season, that Sherrone Moore has proven enough to me to easily be a head coach at a P5 program. Maybe a team like Syracuse was one that made a lot of sense that he could have taken over and put them in a really good position. But here he is taking over this Michigan program. I think realistically, with the schedule that they're facing, losing their starting quarterback, JJ McCarthy, losing Blake Corum, there are 6 offensive linemen going to the NFL Combine, Blake, from the University of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be damn near impossible to replicate a national championship winning season. We need to get that out of the way, and that should not be expected. I think what is realistic, having to face, these are all the difficult games on their schedule. They have to play USC, they have to play Washington, they have to play Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State.
Where's the USC game?
Where is it?
Yeah, is it in the big house?
I'm checking that right now.
Because if that game's in the big house, they ain't losing.
Well, that was what I wrote down as a game that they're going to win. I really think that it's in Ann Arbor. They are going to beat USC. 9-3 though is my expectation for them. I really think that 9-3 is a very, very good jumping off point. This is not like, and there's a lot of comparisons that are going to be drawn between Sherrone Moore and Marcus Freeman because it's the same area of the country, same circumstance of, premier big name, older coach leaves and interim coach that has stepped in takes over, all of that. There's a lot of comparisons, but the difference is not all of the premier elite players on Notre Dame's roster had gone and left. Kyle Hamilton was still there. Michael Mayer was still there. Blake Fisher, Joe Alt. A lot of those guys were still sticking around. Sherrone Moore starting from scratch, 9-3 would be a fantastic first season for him.
I don't want to say, he's starting off in a place for the first-year as a first-year head coach that you got to admit, Joe, not a lot of people start off with. But he doesn't have the experience. I don't think 9-3 is very off, really. I got to be honest. I think 10-2 is not completely off with them. They still are very talented. You know how much I like Alex Orji, the quarterback there. I think that they run. I mean, look, he's an offensive line guy that had play. I mean, Joe, we're talking about a guy that had play calling duties for Harbaugh, right? Like, I don't think Sherrone Moore is going to be a guy that, and Michigan is going to be a team that you look at and be like, man, we're going to get them. They can't get over the hump. I think that they could be a 10-2 team. And Joe, I got to be real with you. If they're 10-2, they're going to the playoff.
Oh yeah. 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 Because 10-2 implies that they're in the top 3 of the conference. Yes, absolutely.
Now, a lot of things will be said about Orji and him throwing the football and, how will they look offensively if they recruited well enough there. They're losing a lot of offensive linemen. They got a lot to replace, Joe. And that's why you say 9-3 it would be a comfortable place. I thought and still remain that I thought it was a lazy hire, just automatically promoting him from within. But I got to admit, man, I think that they're good enough. They're deep enough. I don't know if I can see a world, Joe, of them being below 9-3. Like, who beats them?
Well, right. I just brought up all their upcoming matchups, and that would imply
Penn State. Do they play? Did you say Penn State?
No, they don't play Penn State. I don't believe.
Okay, so USC, Ohio State.
The big games on their schedule are USC, Washington, Texas, Ohio State, and Oregon, and that would imply a team like USC or Washington.
Oh no, they're gonna get the
pulls
Chiefs
out an upset.
They're gonna get the Chiefs clapped by Texas.
Yeah, I kind of just assumed that Texas would be a loss
Texas
for them.
Gonna roll all over them.
So I mentioned though, Blake, that they're losing a lot of important players. They're losing a lot of their offensive line. But conversely, on this end,
and they got Oregon,
and they have Oregon. They all are also, though, bringing back some of the best players in the country at certain positions. And I'm talking about Mason Graham at defensive tackle. I'm talking about Will Johnson at corner, and I'm talking about Colston Loveland at tight end. Those are all, I would argue, the top 3 returning players at their positions. That is the best defensive tackle, cornerback, and tight end returning to college football in 2024.
I don't disagree with that necessarily.
Like that is huge.
Upset Ohio State again, and I swear to God, if Sherrone Moore beats Ohio State and they lose,
Ryan Day's got to get fired. You just think he's got to get fired if they lose to Sherrone Moore at home. It's at home. It would be at Ohio State.
I'm not.
Yeah,
sure.
It's at Ohio State. So if you lose to Sherrone Moore at home again, you have to fire Ryan Day. With that roster, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
If he goes 11-1 and Ryan Day makes the playoffs and they get to a national championship, there's so much more in the season that would have to play out.
They would have to win a national title to rectify that.
Maybe. That's a brutal stretch. That's a brutal schedule. Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. Joe, all 3 of these teams are going to be playoff teams.
I mean, the inverse of that is, imagine if you steal one of those. You steal one of those games.
Team. You just got to win one of them. You got to go 1-2 in those 3 games.
Yeah.
And you can't mess around and lose to like USC.
I mean, I'd go as far as to argue a 9-3 Michigan team with close losses to all 3 of those opponents could be the last team into the playoff.
Very well could be.
It's very feasible.
Very feasible. And again, you're talking about for a first year. But let me say this and add this on, because this is my main thought when we discussed that we're going to talk about Sherrone Moore, and that I've had 2 weeks to kind of think on it. Joe, if there's any fan base in the country that goes 9-3 and should allow a coach that 3, 4, 5 years ago 9-3, God dog, it's Michigan, because you just let Harbaugh do it. So right. I mean, just steady the ship, get your culture in there, bring your guys in there, and then you'll be fine.
That needs to be reiterated. I think a lot of Michigan fans are surprisingly very level-headed about this. I would at least hope that they are, that there isn't this assumption that they're immediately going to win.
They're pissed at Harbaugh.
I don't know what they expect. I mean,
they expected him to leave some of the staff behind.
That was never going to happen in a million years.
I mean,
that wasn't going to happen.
I never really understood that, by the way. Like, Harbaugh's the one that hired that staff.
Right. All of those guys came to coach for Harbaugh, and a lot of them have aspirations to coach in the NFL. So it's like, what do we expect here? Not to mention the fact that Sherrone Moore was able to get Wink Martindale. Like that's not going to completely solve a lot of their problems. If anything, I would argue maybe it's even an upgrade that was who they were able to hire. A lot of, as you're talking about, though, they just need to be patient. If this thing, even if they go 8-4 in this first year, patience is key. Patience is very key, because you gave Harbaugh patience, who had won at Stanford already, won in the NFL, was a Michigan man, had graduated there. You gave him time, even though you were yelling at him the whole time. Give Sherrone Moore a little time. It might take 2-3 years.
I hear you. All right. Let's see what happens. It's going to be a good year. Going to be a fun year. I still think 2024 is going to be we got a super chat. By the way, guess who a former Michigan coach is in the chat?
Oh, he's a fan of the show. I wonder if he does NIL deals. I wonder if we could pay him.
Connor, I mean, here's the truth. You have no idea if this is or isn't Connor Stalions, as crazy as he, as you know.
I was thinking that. I read that and I was like, oh, some joker made his name Connor Stallions, but then immediately it popped in my head. I'm like, we actually have no idea if this actually is him or
He
not.
showed up to a Michigan Barstool event. He showed up to a Michigan game.
He's got no grace, so he's got no. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't think he gives a shit. So he totally would just show up with his name being Connor Stallions.
It would be hilarious if Harbaugh hired him. Alex with a $2 super chat says, "Yep, show patience till the team starts cheating."
He just wanted us to read and finish things off by saying, "Thanks, Alex." Thanks
Wasn't there a claim that Ohio State was doing the same thing?
I believe there was. I believe there was a claim that was happening.
He who hath no sin casteth this first stone. Isn't that what the good book says?
Yeah, but there was no punishment delivered to Ohio State. So,
yeah. All right. Thank you, Alex, for the super chat. So, my good friends over at HomeField Apparel, helmets or radios and helmets. We talk about that in college football. We'll talk about it next.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by HomeField Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan, whatever it is, even Idaho. They have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code RuffinoJoe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
I love all of these NFL draft guys complaining. It's what I'm leading AYS off with tonight.
Oh, great.
About Jaden Daniels not throwing at the combine and Caleb Williams.
Wait, I thought he is throwing.
He is not. He's throwing at his pro day.
Oh, he's throwing at his pro day. I was just a little saddened by him not testing because there was somebody that I spoke to that told me he was going to run and he was going to run a really good time. And, you know, we were getting robbed of that. I just like getting to see how guys stack up.
I was told 2 months ago that there was no way possible that Jaden Daniels runs a 40 at the combine.
Okay, I'll tell you off air who told me that.
Okay, well, I think you understand the relationship I have there, and in no
You'd
way
be surprised who I taught. You would be surprised who told me that. It was very direct. It was like a very direct. Maybe he didn't know and he was just assuming. But
yeah, he was just assuming because I'm telling you, it was not going to happen, especially when meetings happen and walk-ons. All right, Joe. So this is something that I think is really interesting that I know has been talked about. Now, your former head coach, Brian Kelly, has been on the forefront of this. He's actually talked about this, Joe. I actually went and looked, I think 17 times in the last 2 years at LSU about this. So this is something that's come up. Now, they've tested in college football. Obviously, we've had in the NFL. I don't know what the big deal is behind this, but apparently there's a lot of conversations about putting the radios in the quarterback and middle linebacker and safeties helmets during games to call plays. Your thoughts?
I'm just shocked that we've made it this far, that they haven't tried to make this move to put these radios and helmets already. I think that it has been just such a stupid, like prehistoric process that there is signs on the sideline that have to be motioned in. When it's 2024, it's inexpensive. It is so easy to just stick the damn thing in the helmet. It's so easy. The one layer of this, though, that I think it's a little weird is like how many helmets are there going to be per team? Because there's a lot more substituting.
Yeah, five is what I read in the article.
Okay.
4, quarterback, middle linebacker, and 2 safeties is what was tested.
Okay. I say this because
$1,000 says they go with just 2.
I feel like they're going to have to go with more, because what I was saying is that there's a lot more substituting in college football than there is in the NFL. Your Mike linebacker never comes off the field, but in college football, there are a lot of teams that you have multiple fronts rotating in a game. So I wonder how that aspect plays into this, but to remove what has been such a grimy part of the sport, and honestly such a waste of time and energy trying to decipher these signs, I'm glad that we're finally coming into the modern age with these stupid radio helmets. Anyone who's against this, I haven't seen anyone who's against it, but I don't know how you can't support this, because it's just going to make the game more efficient. It's going to make it better. There's going to be less mistakes by young quarterbacks. This is a very good step forward for modernizing what's on the field, with all the stupid shit and changes that have happened on the field with targeting and shortening the games and all that crap. This is one of the first things that actually makes sense if they finalize going through with
it. I don't disagree. I think it makes offenses 10 times better, which is a little bit scary. Because could you imagine telling the red-shirted freshman quarterback to throw the hitch?
That's a good point.
You know,
well,
like
it times out after a certain period of time, but
it's like 15 seconds left on the play clock, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, look, I get what you're saying, and I understand it. Okay. I don't mind it. And look, we need it. The NFL's done it. I do think it's a little goofy to have coaches with, you know, the posters that have like you know, all the different logos on it. Like, you know, Ole Miss had a thing of mustard after the whole Tennessee thing, which I thought was funny, you know, on their play call cards, which is honestly, I talked to a coach a while back who said it's all just a distraction. They go based off of like what baseball coaches do. You know, you have the three guys with headsets and they're just, you know, calling the signals in, you know, whatever. Let's just move to it. Let's just do it. Like, let's stop being idiots. Like, okay, like it's an easy thing to solve. And yeah, I tell you what else, it's another game inside a game. Could you imagine a guy like Lane Kiffin or Brian Kelly or Lincoln Riley talking to their quarterbacks?
Well, that's what I'm really intrigued by, which coaches are going to know how to use this most advantageously. And I think that we're going to see really quickly which offenses hit the ground running and maybe take a step forward, whether it's a coach that's got experience with the NFL or just one that's really creative in knowing how can we get the most out of this. You just talked about how like where that timeout is like how many coaches are going to try and bend the rules, snap the ball quickly so that you can get in their ear and say, you know, go in this direction.
Does it stop tempo offenses?
I don't think it does. I will say, though, one thing I think does change. I think that there are going to be a lot less, there's going to be a lot more audibling, and there's going to be a lot less missed assignments because of bad play calls by inexperienced quarterbacks.
There will be a lot more audibly, and you know what's crazy about that? The game inside the game gets deeper because defenses are going to show something, they're going to audible, and then they're going to get into what they're actually going to run, and then they're going to have to try to audible again. It's going to be a game inside a game, man.
What do you do with all the sign stealing guys? Where do you relocate them in the staff? What do you do with them?
I have no earthly idea. What would you do with them?
I put them up in the – actually, I don't know if there's a limit on the amount of guys you can have in the booth. I put them up in the booth and just have them, you know, model whatever formations are coming up for them and that they're seeing, and just have extra communication to whoever's phoning down to the player on the field. I mean, that's probably the smartest thing to do with them.
The sign stealing thing at a game is not the problem because everybody is doing that. Everybody's trying to get an advantage. The problem with the Cole Connor Stallions thing was they were sending guys to games that they weren't supposed to be at. That's the whole thing.
Do you think – I don't think this would ever happen in the NFL, but for how batshit crazy college football is, do you think that we'll eventually at some point have some sort of a scandal where somebody tries to intercept the frequency of the radios?
We have college students that's all that they're going to be doing.
This is my point.
Yeah.
You think that somebody's first phone call isn't going to be to the computer science department and say, Hey, we want to.
1,000%.
Someone's going to call the engineering department. How do we get in on these? If I were to want to listen to a broadcast that I wasn't supposed to have access to, how would I go about doing that?
Be fun. All right. Wait, what's today? Wednesday? No, today's Monday. We will see you guys again on Wednesday. Or you're going to be at the combine.
No, Wednesday I'm still here. Sunday I will be unavailable.
Okay. So we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Y'all have a good one. Peace.